Shy Waitress tried to hide her scar on her face, until a millionaire took her hand and said, "You're beautiful." "I am sorry, I will get someone else to serve you," Mia stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Wait," the man said calmly, lifting his eyes to meet hers. His gaze was steady, intense, almost disbelieving. "Those eyes? I have painted those eyes before, years ago." Mia froze. For a second, the background hum of the diner, the clinking dishes, murmuring conversations, and soft sizzle from the open kitchen faded into silence. She blinked rapidly, unsure whether to run or apologize again. Her fingers gripped the edge of the notepad tighter, knuckles turning white. The man at table 7, sitting by the window where the morning sun cast soft rays through dusty blinds, wasn't like their usual customers. He wore a navy coat, expensive yet unpretentious, and carried a worn leather sketchbook beside his cup of black coffee. His face was familiar, in the way someone who appeared in magazine interviews or art catalogs might be, but Mia didn't have time for art. She barely had time for herself. "I think you're mistaken, sir," she said softly, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. "Excuse me, I really have to—" "I am not," he replied, gently but firmly. "You do not forget a pair of eyes like that." She turned without another word, walking briskly toward the kitchen door, her long brown hair falling like a curtain to hide the left side of her face. She knew the strand was out of place, felt the faint pull of it where the clip had come undone earlier. But she didn't stop to fix it. Her heart pounded wildly. He could not have seen it. He could not know. The diner was a narrow, old-fashioned place tucked into the edge of a quiet street. Its charm lay in its simplicity. Red leather booths, faded photos of past patrons on the walls, and a jukebox that only played old country songs. The regulars came for the coffee, but stayed for the comfort. Mia had worked here for almost 4 years. She knew every creaky floorboard, every face that came through the front door. She also knew how to make herself invisible. She had perfected the art of gliding between tables, eyes always cast downward, voice polite but distant. She never lingered too long. If a customer looked at her too closely or asked about her past, she found a reason to switch shifts, clean something in the back, or send one of the other girls to cover her table. There was a rhythm to it, a safety, a pattern. But the man at table 7 had broken it in 2 sentences. In the kitchen, Mia leaned against the counter, trying to catch her breath. Sarah, the cook, glanced up from the grill and raised an eyebrow. "You all right, hon? You look like you've seen a ghost." Mia shook her head quickly. "No, just, I need a second." Sarah said nothing more, flipping a pancake with the ease of someone who had been doing it for 20 years. Mia closed her eyes, but all she could see were his, those eyes. I have painted those eyes before. It couldn't be true. And yet, deep inside, beneath the part of her that had spent years hiding, something stirred, a memory almost, a faint echo of something lost. Back at table 7, Ethan sat still, fingers idly tracing the spine of his sketchbook. He had come to the diner on a whim. Driving through the quiet part of town, his eyes had caught the flickering neon sign in the window and something had drawn him in. Maybe it was nostalgia. Maybe it was fate. He had not meant to say anything. He had come in hoping to disappear for a few hours, drink his coffee in peace, maybe sketch the trees outside the window. He certainly had not expected to see her. Not her, exactly, but the girl whose eyes had haunted him for years. He had painted those eyes once. Not from memory, not from life. They had come to him in a dream, or maybe in a moment of solitude, years ago, when he was chasing something real on canvas. The painting had never been finished. It had sat on the easel in the corner of his studio, gathering dust and shadows, until now. Now, sitting across the room from him, was the living image of that dream. But she was more than that. She was real, fragile, wounded, and hiding behind that curtain of hair like it was the last wall she had left. Ethan was not a man easily shaken, but he knew instinctively that this was no coincidence. Mia did not return to the table. Instead, Tom, the other server, brought over the check, awkwardly glancing toward the kitchen as he set it down. Ethan did not touch it. He opened his sketchbook, flipping to a blank page. Slowly, his pencil moved, a curve of hair, the hint of a gaze hidden behind it, and in the center, the eyes. Those eyes. This time he would finish the painting. This time he would not let her disappear. Ethan stood in the center of his studio, the silence pressing in on him like fog. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, landing on the sheets that covered easels and half-finished canvases. The scent of old oil paint, varnish, and cedar hung in the air, a ghost of a life he had slowly stepped away from. 3 years. 3 years since he had picked up a brush with purpose, since he had truly seen something worth translating onto canvas. He moved slowly, almost reverently, toward the back wall. One large painting sat alone, hidden beneath a linen cloth, untouched by time. With a steady hand he peeled it away, revealing a face that had followed him in dreams, until today, when it followed him into reality. There she was. Not completely, not clearly, only the outline of her face and the full render of her eyes. The rest was lost in blurred strokes, muted colors, and unresolved lines, but the eyes were unmistakable. Wide, sad, deep, alive. Mia. He exhaled, almost a laugh, almost a breath of disbelief. "She's real," he whispered to the empty room. The studio had once been alive, assistants moving in and out, critics visiting, collectors calling. Now it stood like a museum, a place preserved in stillness. A soft knock came from the open doorway behind him. "Ethan?" It was Julian, his longtime assistant, friend, and the closest thing he had to family. "You're in here early." Ethan didn't turn. "Do you remember this piece?" Julian stepped closer and looked at the painting, eyebrows rising slightly. "The ghost girl? Yeah, how could I forget? You obsessed over those eyes for months, and then, poof, you quit halfway through." "I did not quit. I just couldn't go on," Ethan replied, gaze fixed on the canvas. "I thought she wasn't real. I thought I had invented her." Julian crossed his arms. "And now?" "I saw her yesterday, at a diner off Willow Street. She served me coffee, tried to avoid me like the plague, but it's her, Julian. I would stake everything on it. Those eyes—" He trailed off, voice thickening. "They were not just a vision, they're hers." Julian didn't answer immediately. After a beat he said, "So what now? Are you going to try to paint her again, after all this time?" Ethan slowly sat down on the nearby stool. "I have not painted a single piece in 3 years, not really. My last 10 exhibitions? They were all recycled from older works or minor revisions, and they still sold, because my name means something apparently, but I have felt nothing." Julian nodded slowly. He had seen the decline, known the spark was gone, but never dared to say it aloud. "Until yesterday," Ethan continued, "when she walked up to my table, trembling, hiding behind her hair. I felt, again, the need to capture something real, not for the gallery, not for the buyers, but for me." He stood and walked back toward the window, looking out over the city skyline. "I do not know her name. I do not know her story. But I know that whatever it is, it lives in those eyes. And if I never paint another thing in my life, I want to finish this." Julian studied him carefully. "So, what's your plan? Just show up again and stare at her until she runs off?" Ethan cracked a smile. "Not quite, but I am going back. Not for the coffee, not for the nostalgia. For her. And if she refuses to speak to you, then I will respect that," Ethan said softly. "But I have to try. Because if I let this go again, I might never pick up a brush again." He looked back at the canvas, at the eyes that once felt like fiction and now felt like fate. For the first time in years, Ethan felt the faintest tremble in his fingertips, the ache to create, to finish, to understand. He covered the painting gently, but his expression was no longer clouded. There was clarity now, a reason, a muse. Tomorrow he would return to the diner, and this time he would not let her slip away. The bell above the door gave a soft jingle as Ethan stepped into the diner again, just after the lunch rush. The place was quieter this time, with only a few scattered patrons hunched over half-empty plates and mugs of lukewarm coffee. The same familiar scent of grilled bacon and brewed coffee lingered in the air. He chose the same table, by the window, where the afternoon light filtered in with a gentle warmth. He did not bring a sketchbook this time, only himself. Behind the counter, Mia hesitated when she saw him. She had been hoping, irrationally, that he would not return. Her chest tightened, but her feet moved anyway. It was her section, and she had long ago accepted that part of her job was swallowing fear like a second cup of coffee. She approached cautiously, notepad in hand, hair carefully swept over her left side like always. "Hello again," Ethan said, his voice calm and kind. Mia gave a small nod, not meeting his eyes. "Can I get you something?" "The same as last time. Black coffee." He paused. "Unless you recommend something else." She almost smiled, but caught herself. "The blueberry pie is good today." "Then I will trust you," he replied. "Pie it is." She scribbled down the order and turned to leave, but Ethan gently added, "I am sorry if I made you uncomfortable before. That was not my intention." Mia paused. That voice, so steady, so sincere, it caught her off guard. She gave a brief, polite nod, but still did not look at him directly. "It's okay, I'm used to it." Ethan frowned slightly but said nothing more. She returned with his order a few minutes later, setting it down with careful precision. "Here you go," she said softly. He looked up at her, searching her face, trying to find the courage to say something more. But then something unexpected happened. A gust of wind burst through the open window beside their table, swirling the paper napkins and rustling the sugar packets in their tray. The force of it caught Mia off guard. Her hair lifted with the sudden breeze, fluttering just enough to reveal what she had hidden so well. A pale, raised scar traced a line from her left temple down across her cheek, curving just below her cheekbone. It was not grotesque, but it was raw. A story etched into skin, and it was real. Everything in the diner seemed to pause. Mia's hand flew to her face, too late. She knew it was exposed, knew people had seen. A murmur rippled from a table behind them, someone whispering too loudly. Her breath caught in her throat, but before she could turn and flee, Ethan stood up. His movement was slow, measured. He stepped beside her, not looming, but present. He reached out, not to touch her scar, but to gently gather a strand of her hair that had fallen across her cheek. He tucked it back carefully, not to hide her, but simply to see her. "You do not need to hide," he said, voice steady and warm. "This beauty, it is not something everyone has. It is the kind you earn." Mia's eyes widened, a mix of shock and disbelief flickering within them. She opened her mouth, but no words came. The murmur in the diner stopped. People looked, but they did not stare. They saw something shift, something unspoken. A few looked away out of respect, others watched quietly, as if afraid to breathe and break the moment. Ethan stepped back, giving her space. "I am sorry if that was too forward," he added gently, "but I meant every word." Mia stood frozen for another second, then gave the smallest nod, her fingers still brushing her cheek as if confirming the scar was still there, and yet somehow lighter. She turned and walked back toward the kitchen, heart racing, breath shallow. But for the first time she did not feel like running. She did not feel shame, just something unfamiliar, rising quietly in her chest. Hope. The next morning the diner was quieter than usual. A slow drizzle blurred the view outside the window, painting the world in grays and soft reflections. Mia moved between tables with her usual quiet rhythm, her hair slightly pulled back but still guarding the left side of her face. She had not expected to see him again. Not after what happened yesterday. Yet part of her had secretly waited, listening for the bell above the door, stealing glances toward the window seat. At precisely 10:17 IEM, the bell rang. Ethan walked in without hesitation, carrying something wrapped in brown paper under his arm. His expression was gentle, resolute. He sat at the same table without looking around. He waited. Mia approached cautiously. Her heart pounded. She did not speak, only placed a menu before him. "I did not come for food," Ethan said softly. "I brought something for you." She blinked, confused. Slowly, deliberately, he unwrapped the brown paper and revealed a large sketch pad. The pages were slightly worn at the edges, the paper thick and textured. He opened it and turned it toward her. There, in delicate pencil strokes, was a face. Her face, or rather the beginning of it, soft outlines of her hair, the curve of her lips, but most vividly, those eyes. The same sorrowful, searching eyes she saw in the mirror every morning. It was her, drawn years before he had ever met her. Mia gasped, stepping back slightly. "What is this?" she whispered. Ethan held the sketchbook out, resting it gently on the table between them. "I started this years ago. I did not know who she was, just that I could not forget her. I never finished it. Couldn't. Something was missing. Until I met you." Mia stared at the image, her chest tightening. Her instinct was to flee, to deny it. But those eyes, they were hers, undeniably, not just in shape, but in the pain they carried, the hesitance, the guarded hope. She looked up at him, her voice barely audible. "Why would you draw me? You did not even know me." "I didn't," he admitted. "But I felt you, somehow, and now I know it's not just a face, it's a story. Your story." Mia took another step back, as if the table itself had become too intimate. The room felt smaller, the air thinner. Her hands trembled slightly. I need a moment," she said, turning away quickly. She rushed to the back of the diner, pushing open the door to the restroom and locking it behind her. Her reflection stared back from the mirror, eyes wide, breath quick, lips parted in shock. Why her? Why now? What kind of fate brought a man who saw her before he even knew her? She leaned over the sink, trying to steady herself, but her heart would not slow down. Out in the diner, Ethan waited. He did not follow. He did not look around for her. He simply reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside it, a single handwritten note. He placed it next to the sketchbook, packed it neatly with care, and stood to leave. The rain had picked up by the time he stepped outside. He paused only once, turning back toward the window where he had sat. Then he disappeared into the soft gray morning. A few minutes later, Mia returned. The booth was empty, but on the table, carefully placed, was the sketchbook. And beside it the note, "If you have ever felt alone, come find me. My gallery is at 14th and Brooks. I believe we can finish this together, not just the painting." She stared at the words for a long time. Her fingers brushed over the sketch once more. This was not just art. It was recognition, and maybe, just maybe, an invitation to something more. The gallery was quiet that Thursday afternoon, the kind of hush that settled only when no one else was around to disturb the air. Soft light filtered through tall windows, landing on white walls where paintings stood like silent witnesses to their creator's past. Ethan had just finished arranging a new piece near the corner display when the door creaked open. He turned, not expecting a visitor so late in the day. It was her. Mia stood just inside the entrance, soaked from the rain, her coat clinging to her frame, hair partially pinned back but still falling in front of her face like a veil. Her eyes, those unmistakable eyes, met his briefly before darting away. He said nothing, only walked over slowly and held out a clean towel from the reception counter. "Thank you," she whispered, taking it with trembling hands. He didn't ask why she had come. He didn't need to. He simply stepped aside and gestured toward the small sitting area near the back of the gallery. She followed him, each step hesitant, as though unsure the floor beneath her would hold. They sat across from each other in quiet. The gallery lights buzzed faintly above. Outside, the rain continued its rhythmic tapping against the windows. After a long pause, Mia finally spoke. "I wasn't going to come. I told myself 100 reasons not to, but your note, it wouldn't leave me." Ethan nodded slowly. "I'm glad you did." She stared at her hands. I thought if I ignored it, the ache would go away, but it didn't. You saw something in me that I've been trying to bury for years, and then you put it on paper? He remained still, letting her speak on her terms, not pushing, not pressing. I used to dance, she said finally. Ballet, since I was 5. It was everything. I used to dream of stages, lights, motion. It was the only time I felt seen. She paused, her throat tightening. One night when I was 15, our house caught fire. Electrical fault, they said. My parents tried to get me out, but I had passed out in my room. I was pulled out unconscious by a neighbor. She lifted her hand slightly toward her face, not touching the scar, but tracing its path in the air. This happened then. My father, he could not look at me the same after. My mother tried to pretend nothing changed, but everything did. Ethan's hands tightened slightly in his lap. She saw it and softened her voice. I stopped dancing. Kids at school stared, whispered. People said it wasn't that bad, that it would fade. But it didn't. Neither did the way they looked at me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I started hiding. Behind hair, behind silence. I moved out as soon as I could. I got the diner job because they didn't ask questions. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes full of something deeper than sorrow, resignation, weariness, but also hope. And then you sat in my section. And suddenly I wasn't invisible anymore. Ethan leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, his gaze never wavering. I do not see your scar when I look at you. I see the fire you walk through. Mia blinked quickly, eyes stinging. You don't flinch when you look at it. That's rare. It is not something to flinch at, he said gently. It is a story, yours. And it deserves to be seen. Silence settled again, but it was softer now, familiar. Then Ethan reached behind the chair and pulled out the unfinished canvas, the painting he had kept hidden for years. I want to finish this, with you, if you're willing. Mia hesitated, then stood slowly and walked over to the easel. She looked down at the face, her face, drawn with reverence and vulnerability. She reached out and traced the outline of the eyes with one fingertip. A tear fell before she could stop it. Okay, she whispered. Ethan looked up. You'll sit for me? She nodded. Yes, but only if you promise you won't hide the scar. He stood and stepped beside her. I never intended to. For the first time, she smiled without reservation, and somewhere in that quiet gallery, surrounded by shadows and light, 2 broken pieces began to find their way toward being whole. The studio transformed in ways neither of them expected. What once was a place of silence and solitude became, slowly, a space of quiet connection. Mia arrived every morning at 10 sharp, her step still tentative at first, her voice soft. Ethan would greet her with a gentle nod, always the same calm tone, never rushing. She sat on the stool in the center of the room, surrounded by canvases, natural light pouring in from the high windows. At first, her shoulders were stiff, her gaze hesitant. But Ethan never asked her to pose a certain way. He let her be, let her breathe, and with time, she relaxed. Ethan never spoke of the scar. He never asked how it felt, never inquired about the pain. But what struck Mia most was that he never looked away from it either. His eyes met hers with unwavering respect, and when they wandered, they never flinched from the line etched across her cheek. He saw it, but more than that, he saw her. Each session was a study in trust. Ethan painted her not just with strokes, but with reverence. He captured the light that danced across her skin in the late afternoons, the subtle twitch of her lip when she was thinking, the way her eyes softened when she forgot she was being watched. Still, something in the painting eluded him. Every night, Ethan stared at the canvas and felt the faint tug of incompletion. The form was there, the emotion, but not the soul. It needed something delicate yet undeniable. One morning, he met her at the door with a quiet smile and no brushes in hand. "Come with me," he said. She followed him around the back of the studio, where a small garden bloomed behind a wooden gate. It was modest, slightly wild, with tall stalks swaying in the breeze and flowers blooming in no particular pattern. He knelt beside a patch of violet-tinted daisies and gently plucked one. Then he turned to her and stepped close. Her breath caught as he tucked the flower into her hair, just above her left ear, right next to the scar. "This flower," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "grows where the soil is poorest. Where most things give up, it begins to bloom. It is not beautiful in spite of where it grows, but because of it." Mia blinked, trying to steady her heartbeat. "It reminds me of you," Ethan added. She said nothing, but her throat tightened. That afternoon, while she sat once more beneath the studio's soft golden light, Ethan finally saw what the painting needed. He returned to his canvas with a reverence that was almost sacred. This time, he did not avoid the scar, he defined it. He shaped it with care, not harshness. He gave it texture, a presence, a story, and beside it, in the hair that swept away from her face, he painted the small purple flower. It sat gently, like a quiet crown, a declaration not of perfection, but of perseverance. When Mia saw the nearly finished portrait a few days later, she stood in silence for a long moment. Her hand rose slowly, fingertips trembling as they hovered just above the canvas. There she was. Her, not the version she had tried to hide, not the edited reflection she practiced in mirrors. This was her truth, her scar, her eyes, her soul. She started, but the words tangled in her throat. Ethan stood beside her, saying nothing. Finally, she whispered, "It's me." He handed her a glass of water. Their fingers brushed. She looked down, startled by the sudden warmth, but his hand didn't pull away. Instead, it held hers gently, grounding her. "I have never painted anyone like you," he said softly. "You are the most beautifully imperfect soul I have ever known." Her eyes lifted to his, and for the first time she did not look away. Her smile came slowly, hesitantly, but it was real, no veil, no shame. Just Mia. And for Ethan, it was the most complete portrait he had ever seen. The invitation was simple, white cardstock, gold lettering. No flourish. Just a name at the top in elegant script. The unfinished, beautiful. Below it, the date, time, and the address of Ethan's gallery. Mia stared at it for a long time. "It should be your night," she had said to Ethan when he first brought it up. "Your work, your story." But Ethan had only smiled gently and replied, "It is our story, and that painting, it's not mine, it's yours. I just held the brush." At first she resisted. The thought of standing in front of strangers, letting them see not just her face but her scar, uncovered, unedited, terrified her. But Ethan's voice, quiet and unwavering, remained with her. "You are not hiding anymore, Mia. You are showing the world what beauty really looks like." And so, she agreed. The gallery glowed that evening. Warm lights washed the white walls in gold. Glasses of champagne clinked gently. Soft jazz played in the background, and guests murmured in admiration as they moved between paintings. Most were new works. Ethan's return to form had been nothing short of miraculous. Each piece was raw, emotional, deeply human. But none drew more attention than the one in the center. A single spotlight illumined it, Mia's portrait. It was not exaggerated, not polished. Her eyes looked straight ahead, unflinching. Her smile soft but honest. The scar traced her cheek in all its truth, and nestled in her hair, just beside it, was the painted bloom of the purple daisy. People did not speak much in front of it. They stood, they stared. Some turned away with tears in their eyes. Others returned to it again and again, drawn back by something they couldn't quite name. Mia stood quietly in the back at first, uncertain, hidden in a soft navy dress with her hair pinned loosely, fully pinned back. Her scar was visible, and for once it was not the first thing she thought about. Ethan approached beside her. "You okay?" he whispered. She took a shaky breath, then nodded. "I think so." He touched her hand gently. You're not alone." Not long after, a small voice tugged at her awareness. "Excuse me, are you the lady in the painting?" Mia turned. A girl, no more than 10, stood there with her hand tightly held in her mother's. Her face bore a clear burn scar along one side, faded but present. Mia knelt to her level, heart pounding. "Yes, that's me." The girl looked at her for a long time, then reached forward and hugged her. Mia's breath caught. The girl whispered, "I have a scar too. I always hide it. But you made me feel pretty." Mia closed her eyes, arms tightening around the child. Her throat burned, her eyes stung. When they pulled apart, the girl's mother mouthed, "Thank you," before they turned and walked away. Ethan came to her side again, slipping his hand into hers, grounding her as the emotions threatened to overflow. Mia wiped her eyes, looking up at the painting once more. The girl had seen something in her she had never dared see in herself, and in that moment something clicked into place. Ethan leaned in close, his voice low, his breath warm against her ear. "Now do you see?" he murmured. "You are the most beautiful thing I've ever created." She turned to him, a tear tracing down the same cheek the scar lived on. He raised one hand, gently brushing her hair behind her ear. Then, with infinite tenderness, he pressed a soft kiss to the scar at her temple. It was not a kiss of sympathy, it was reverence. Mia let out a soft laugh through her tears. "You really do see me, don't you?" "I always have," he said. They stood there, hand in hand, beneath the soft lights and the eyes of silent paintings, and for the first time in her life, Mia didn't feel unfinished. She felt whole. The bell above the diner door rang one last time as Mia stepped out, her apron folded neatly over her arm. She had handed in her notice with a quiet smile, hugged Sarah goodbye, and even exchanged a few kind words with Tom. No fanfare, no dramatic exit. Just a quiet close to a chapter that no longer defined her. Outside, the sun bathed the street in late morning gold. Her hair, tied loosely in a high ponytail, danced with the breeze. For the first time in years, the left side of her face, scar and all, felt the warmth of the sun fully, and she did not flinch. Her steps were steady, each one forward, light, assured. It had been 2 weeks since the exhibition, since she had stood beneath her own portrait and watched strangers see her without judgment, some even with admiration, since a little girl with a burn mark had whispered the words that would live in Mia's heart forever. "You made me feel pretty." Mia never went back to hiding. She and Ethan never made a grand announcement. They did not post pictures or make declarations, but everyone in their circle knew. The way his eyes followed her in a room, the way her laughter rose brighter when he was near, the silent way they held hands while working side by side. Their love was not loud, it was real. Mia joined Ethan at the gallery soon after, not just as his muse, but as his partner. They launched a project called Canvas of Courage, a community program for burn survivors, amputees, and those with visible differences to express their stories through art. Mia helped them paint, helped them speak, helped them stand in front of others with their scars uncovered and their hearts wide open. She no longer avoided mirrors. She embraced them. She no longer pulled her hair down to shield her face. She let it fly, and on that bright morning as she crossed the street on her way to the gallery, a little boy sitting on a park bench caught her eye. He looked up from a coloring book, his tiny arm bandaged, his face curious. Mia smiled at him, wide and full of life. The boy hesitated, then smiled back. It was a small thing, but for Mia, it meant everything. She kept walking, her heart full, her chin high, her past no longer something she needed to bury. The world had not changed, but she had, and in the quiet of that realization, she finally understood something Ethan had once whispered in the gallery, when the lights were dim and only the two of them remained. "You were never unfinished," he had said. "You were just waiting to be seen." And now, she was. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey of healing, courage, and quiet love. Mia's story reminds us that true beauty lies not in perfection, but in the resilience of the human spirit, and that sometimes the scars we hide are the most powerful parts of who we are. If this story touched your heart, inspired you, or made you see the world a little differently, we invite you to become part of our growing community. Subscribe to Soul Stirring Stories channel for more heartfelt, real-life tales that move your soul, and stay with you long after the story ends. Because here, every story heals, every story matters. And maybe, just maybe, your story is next.